Welcome to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Hey, Greek people, I'd like to help you in your struggle to be free. There must be 50 ways to not pay your creditors. And the easiest is just say no. Flo?
Flo?
Po?
Wow.
Joe? Just get on your checkbook and don't write any checks, Jack. Germans won't care. They got plenty of exports.
Well, the IMF has been defaulted on, as we know, but this weekend, tomorrow, the Greek people have a chance to vote yes or no of whether or not they want to do this credit deal. Well,
there must be 50 ways to leave the Germans. Just send them some sauerkraut, Jack.
Okay. Well, the finance minister of Greece, his name is Yanis Varoufakis, and
Varoufakis, yes.
He wrote on his blog why we recommend a no in the referendum in 6 short bullet points. I am only going to read bullet point number 1 because he says...
But you have to do it in the sound and rhythm of Paul Simon singing that famous 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover song. That's the mandate of this show today. It must be sung in that the karaoke version of that 6 point to the Germans from Yanis Varoufakis.
Well, negotiations have stalled, Jack, because Greece's creditors, A, refused to reduce our unpayable public debt, and B, insisted that it should be repaid parametrically by the weakest members of our society, their children and their grandchildren.
Parametrically means paranormally. They want to will the debt to be repaid through telekinesis. They're going to move mountains of debt using their minds. And if that doesn't work, they're simply not going to pay the debt. Why? Because it was odious debt and fraudulently induced to begin with, and it's unsecured, and they should just blow off.
Well, in fact, in a headline we're going to discuss, they talk about the fact that, well, Greece benefited from joining the euro, and that's why people want to stay in the euro, because their borrowing costs went from something like 15% to 5%. Well, whose fault is that? You know, it's the lender's fault for lending to these people, this nation, at 15%, at 5%.
I blame the Olympics, because they had the Olympics in Athens, and it gave everybody this real feel-good feeling, like, oh, wow, we're champions of the world again. And they were borrowing money at 5%, and they thought that they could continue on this forever, but that didn't work out. And so, but it's not really the Greeks' problem. It's the creditors' problem for allowing the market to fail. It's market failure orchestrated by Germany, who have benefited enormously by the ensuing cheap euro that boosted their exports and funded Germany for the next 5, 6, 7, 10 years.
Now, regarding this debt that Yanis Varoufakis says cannot be paid, and pretty much every economist in the world says it's unable to be paid, well, Moody's also said that neither growth nor austerity will succeed even over multiple generations in cutting Greece's debt of 177% debt to GDP to manageable levels. And we know that the IMF's data, also the secret data release, they also showed that, in fact, even by like 2030, they would still not have their debt down to below 120%, which would be sustainable at 118%.
No, Greece is tired of being this appendage on the euro zone that's simply there to make it easier for Germany to export. They're tired of that. They want their freedom. They want their sovereignty. And the way to do that is to walk away from this fraudulently induced, illegal, odious debt that was put together in a criminal racket to begin with when Greece entered the Eurozone. It's not even valid. It's even less valid than the Anglo-Irish debt, which was unsecured debt. Ireland, for some reason, decided to take responsibility for that debt, even though they had the option to simply say no. It's even less, the debentures upon which this debt is written are written with even less veracity. There's nothing in the debenture of the debt that says that would imply any repayment under these circumstances in any way.
By the way, you notice that we're not talking about Puerto Rico. They owe $73 billion, for example, to U.S. Funds. Well, you know, the fact is that the U.S. treats these situations differently than how Germany is. And this is why, you know, Germany is taking all the benefit, none of the risks or dangers of having weaker members. The weaker members, as part of the euro, of course, reduce the value of the euro and help Germany, but they don't want to any quid pro quo. But there's another interesting phrase. So we have the situation of the parametrically designed debt. so that the weakest members of society for several generations have to pay. Well, here's a headline.
They're going to need the paramedics with the parametric debt. I mean, that's just another phrase that's made up by bureaucrats. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a made-up phrase to make it sound like they're doing some work that's meaningful in some way. It's just a stupid, silly phrase. As we cover on this show so many times, economists and bureaucrats, they just make stuff up, like Islamofascism, was like pulled out of somebody's to explain their bombing and droning for no reason.
Well, it's like a different curve. It's a curve. It's a little child's play. So I'm going to this headline here, the demerging Greek economy. The idea of emerging economies, formerly poor, badly run, and closed markets that open up and reform to produce rapid catch-up growth is well known. We have acronyms such as BRICS and MINTS to group them. So now, however, he's talking about Greece as a demerging economy. It had been badly run, joined the euro, then they said it was well run, and now it's declining.
No,
submerging.
Greece is pivoting. Greece is pivoting, just like Intel had to pivot, or Facebook pivoted, or Google pivoted. Greece is not as big as those companies, but it is pivoting. It's pivoting away from the business model of being a debt slave. And they're going to pivot into the model of being a sovereign people with a thriving Greek-centric business.
Exactly. Now, what the euro did, so we're talking about all the debts that they have that they cannot pay. Let's look at responsibility for that, because most...
Look, first of all, it's not about Greece's debt that they cannot pay. It's about Germany's debt that they can't collect.
Exactly.
Okay? That's
Good
the
idea,
point.
good point.
Germany's got debts that they can't collect. Who's going to suffer? Well, Deutsche Bank is a $100 trillion derivatives book that's about to blow up and go the way of Lehman Brothers. We should be focused on Germany and the fact that they're about to trigger the worldwide global financial apocalypse with the collapse of Deutsche Bank. That's what we should be focusing on. Forget Greece. Greece is not going to pay the debt. They've said they're not going to pay the debt. They're never going to pay the debt. They never will pay the debt. And draw a line in it. It's over. Go back to Germany and worry about Deutsche Bank, because you're about to have your freaking economy blow up.
So, well, let's look at how much debt they took on and why, and who encouraged it. After the creation of the euro in 1999, Greece got another enormous boost from cheap borrowing. Greek 10-year bond yields started the 1990s at around 24%, 3 times the average for countries that would join the euro with Greece. By 2002, the cost of long-term borrowing for Greece and the other euro members had converged at around 5%. They fell even further until Greece's borrowing tore away from the pack again in 2010. So it was banks that were lending to Greece at 5% instead of the 24%, because they themselves took the calculated risks. All those smartest men in the room in the back offices, they decided Germany will pay these debts if Greece can't.
That's right.
If they were wrong, it's their fault.
Go to Germany. They made the bets figuring that Germany had their back. Well, Greece was not paying. Now go to Germany.
Yes.
Leave Yanis Varoufakis alone. Leave Alexis Tsipras alone.
Oh, no, you're not going to start crying.
Yeah. Go to Merkel. She's got bags of money. That's who made the loan. They've got the money.
Yeah, well, who made the loan were Deutsche Bank. They were the banks. They were Bank Paribas. They were Credit Lyonnais. They were Credit Agricole. These were the banks that were lending to Greece at these rates,
right,
on the assumption that Germany would pay if worse came to worse, as it has. Well, then they decided to turn those private debts into sovereign debts. It was Merkel and the finance ministers of the Eurogroup who decided to convert this private debt into sovereign debt, put it on the taxpayer.
That's right.
So as we know, the 400 billion euros in bailout that allegedly went to Greece actually went to Deutsche Bank, actually went to all the European banks.
That's correct. That's where the money is. If you want your money, go see them. Don't forget Greece. They're not going to give you anything. They're defaulting. They've always had a default. The game that Yanis Varoufakis and Alex Tsipras of the Syriza party have been playing is they're looking to default now since they got into office in the beginning of 2015. They've never for a moment ever considered, with one scintilla of possibility, ever paying any of this debt back. But the game that they're playing is to try to stretch this out in a public relations way so that by at some point in time, people begin to blame the creditors and not the debtors. So even New York Times is blaming the IMF. Forbes magazine is blaming Germany. The world financial press is now blaming the creditors. And that was the genius of the Syriza party, is that they keep saying that we're willing to pay the debt back. The mainstream media says, see, they compromised. Then they go into a room and they say, we're willing to pay the debt back as long as you forgive us all this debt and we never have to pay it back. And then the whole thing is based on the facts of the reality of the situation once again. But at this point, all of the frustration is aimed at the creditors, which is the genius of Varoufakis. He's a genius. He's a mastermind. He's the greatest economist of the 21st century.
Well, also, let's look at the fact that the role of central banks in all of this, and banks themselves, and the fact that we have so much money and printed money and just cash flowing all over the place seeking a yield. So in the case of Puerto Rico, the reason why they're the third biggest issuer of municipal bonds in the entire U.S. and their regions, well, the reason is that there was so much demand for their debt. So who were all those people lending them $73 billion worth
Stockbrokers
on
like
a
me.
tiny economy?
Back in Wall Street, they sell the Puerto Rican AA rated 8% 10-year notes all day long.
And that's because they need the yield to pay their pensions. So then it all blows up. But, quickly, I want to look at this hysterical GIF, or GIF, whatever you want to call it, how to explain in one GIF why the loans never helped the Greek people. And you see that's a kitty cat stealing the...
Oh, I love the kitty cat videos.
And I also want to point out...
Those are some smart pussies.
The demerging economy concept. So they compare it to Turkey, which here is Turkey is a dark blue line from 1980 to 2010.
It's quite a menagerie of metaphors you have there, pussycats and turkeys.
Well, and here's Greece, the blue line.
What is this?
So it's comparing the Turkey to Greece since they got...
Comparing them with what?
To each other in GDP
Oh,
growth.
GDP, okay.
GDP.
And what's the blue line is
not
Greece.
to cats. They're not comparing them to
Oh,
cats.
I thought they were the kitty cats in these different countries and comparing how many videos each cat gets. And obviously the Greek kitty cats are not getting much video play.
Well, maybe this is the better way to grow, like Turkey has, just slow growth, rather than just highly leveraged booming economies. And this is what everybody says they want. Our central banks, our finance ministries want booming house prices. Well, it causes destabilization. They want booming stock markets. When they crash, well, that causes chaos and bad things.
If Greece effectively extricates itself from the euro in 5 years' time, the economy will be fantastic. The British economy will be where Greece is today because they're just delaying the day of reckoning. Anyway, we've got to go. Thanks so much.
Just say no.
Stay tuned for the second half, a whole lot more.